Trauma affects everyone who experiences it in different ways. Some people avoid the trauma and never move on. In some cases, people become delusional as a mechanism to push the trauma far, far away. In some cases still, the trauma of individuals collide and end in a strange mother-daughter familial love triangle. Spoilers ahead, we begin underwater as the title sequence flows through. The musical score is upbeat but quickly becomes ominous. Welcome to 2013's The Truth About Emanuel. Enter Emanuel rising from the water with an intense look across her face. She drops a bombshell on us right from the gate. There was an accident, and although Emanuel was saved by the paramedics, her mother died. A first breath for a last breath. Emanuel boards a train on the way either to or home from work. Instead, she stands and sees a boy sitting near her. She checks him out, notices his name, Claude, is written on his backpack, and they make eye contact. That night, we see a slice of Emanuel's home life. Her father, Dennis, is doing what fathers do and trying to talk about Emanuel's day, but she doesn't take the conversation seriously and instead turns it into an opportunity to chastise the other woman at the table, who we can assume is Emanuel's stepmother. She makes jokes about being a lesbian and is clearly just trying to make her stepmother uncomfortable. It works. After she excuses herself from the dinner table, we see that Emanuel's room is covered in maps, likely of some place she's never visited but dreams of one day experiencing. From her window, Emanuel sees a lady moving into the house next door. She's beautiful and cradling a newborn child in her arms. Emanuel looks on longingly. Back on the train, Claude saves a seat for Emanuel. They have a brief encounter, exchanging names and some banter. Back at home, we see Emanuel using a pair of binoculars to spy on her new neighbor and stepmother as they chat on the porch. That night at dinner, Emanuel's stepmother Janice mentions that their new neighbor Linda is looking for a part-time babysitter. Emanuel expresses interest, which comes as a surprise to her father and to Janice, since it seems Emanuel doesn't care all that much for children. Later, Emanuel meets Linda, and after a brief intro, is left alone with a sleeping baby in the other room. Emanuel asks a couple questions about what to do if the child should wake, and it becomes clear that she doesn't really know anything about caring for children. But alas, she's left alone with the baby nonetheless. Emanuel tries to play music on the stereo, and it ends up blaring throughout the house. After frantically trying to shut the noise off, she rips the plug from the wall. Frightened that the baby's woken, she listens closely to the baby monitor. It sounds like rhythmic breathing at first, but begins to sound more like the rolling of waves against the shore. Strange, though Emanuel's just relieved the baby hasn't woken. Although hired for babysitting, we see Emanuel helping Linda with more and more chores. She prunes roses and helps with laundry. It seems a bit of a strange arrangement, but we see Linda and Emanuel becoming closer. At times, much to the chagrin of Janice, who seems to struggle connecting with either of the two women. As Emanuel takes a load of laundry upstairs, she hears ocean waves coming from the baby Chloe's room, and she realizes that they sound oddly like the static coming from the baby monitor. Then, she hallucinates water pouring from underneath the door before being interrupted by Linda. "Don't wake the baby, we'll finish the laundry later." Okay, something fishy's going on here. The next day, Emanuel heads back over to Linda's. Linda's breastfeeding Chloe, but also claims that the baby's sleeping. It's a bit strange how a baby can be doing both of those things, isn't it? In her office, Linda picks up a baby rattle and mentions how it was Chloe's favorite toy, but that it's broken now, even though it just rattled. Then she stares off for a moment, and it's clear something is very wrong here. Linda heads off to take a nap, and Emanuel makes her way up to the child's room only to find out that it's a fake baby. I was suspicious of this all along, but it turns out this lady is mothering a plastic doll. Now, I've never been a babysitter before, but is there anyone out there who's had the same experience? I'd love to hear from you. Later, Emanuel's back on the train looking for Claude, but he's nowhere to be found. When she reaches the last car and looks out the back, water begins filling up the car past her ankles and towards her knees. She's pretty distraught now, and as we get closer to the anniversary of her mother's death, Emanuel's birthday, her hallucinations continue to get worse. At dinner, Emanuel's clearly in a bad mood and not one for conversation. Janice uses some choice words and tells Emanuel she's dying to meet that baby. Cute, tasteless, dead baby joke. On the train that evening, Claude finds Emanuel and sits next to her. She gets upset with him and tells him that if he's going to be her boyfriend, she can't have him disappearing on her like that. This takes Claude by surprise. Eventually, he admits he's thought about being with Emanuel, and then she kisses him. She's a little like the train, you know? Back and forth. Later on, we find Linda giving Chloe a bath in the kitchen, and it's clear Emanuel's getting more and more uncomfortable with all of this. Linda wants to take the baby on a walk to meet the neighbors, but obviously Emanuel thinks that that's a bad idea. So she makes up a flu epidemic in the neighborhood to deter Linda. This bad news sets Chloe to crying, and Linda has to tell Emanuel how to care for her. Emanuel plays along, but it's almost as if she's doing more than playing along now. Maybe she's buying into the Chloe's a real baby thing. She's hard to read. Linda decides to go on a run to lose some baby weight, and leaves Chloe with Emanuel. She's very clear. Emanuel is not to turn her back on Chloe as long as she's caring for her, since she's a feisty baby and might fall if she isn't being watched. A short while after Linda leaves, the doorbell rings and the mood changes. This can't be good. Emanuel reluctantly takes Chloe and goes to answer the door, only to find her stepmother Janice standing there. Emanuel panics and, after a bit of bad babysitting, drops the baby on the floor as Janice comes inside to bring some cookies for Linda. After a brief but very tense conversation between Janice and Emanuel, Linda returns. The baby's still on the floor. Janice invites Linda over for dinner next Friday, and Emanuel agrees to babysit late that night, all the while trying to get Janice out of the house so she can tend to baby Chloe. As if things couldn't get any worse for baby Chloe, Janice places her on the doorside table as she's leaving, still thinking this is just a toy, and the doll rolls off onto the ground. 2 falls in a matter of minutes cannot be good for a baby's health. Jokes aside though, this movie does a really good job here of creating a tense situation around Emanuel. After Janice leaves, Emanuel goes to wake the baby. After a moment of panic and unable to find the doll, Emanuel locates it next to the doorside table and breaks a vase in the process of picking it up. This turns into the perfect cover actually. Although Emanuel cuts herself on the vase, it distracts Linda from Chloe. Linda engages her motherly instincts and patches Emanuel's finger with a kiss to make it better. Back on the train, Emanuel and Claude plan a date for Friday night, even though this conflicts with her late-night babysitting duties. That evening, Emanuel's walking home and is beginning to look more confident, less troubled with the thoughts of her late mother and the upcoming anniversary of her death. She speaks to Linda about her date with Claude and informs her that she won't be able to babysit. Emanuel inquires about Chloe's dad, and Linda explains that not all men know how to step up when it comes to being a dad. This seems to only create more questions for Emanuel, though she doesn't air any of them to Linda. Now comes Friday night. Claude arrives, and Janice has obvious questions for Dennis about why Emanuel would plan a date when she has prior obligations. The family meets Claude briefly and invites him for dinner next week. Emanuel's birthday, no less. Outside, Emanuel and Claude jump on his bike and take off into the night. Lucky for Emanuel, Claude's bike has pegs. All the cool kids had pegs. They go cruising through the night without a care in the world. Back at Emanuel's house, Janice is getting upset with Dennis because he always takes Emanuel's side. She goes to shut off the music coming from Emanuel's room and notices Linda across the way. Janice has a look of suspicion on her face, seeing Linda like this, scantily clad from Emanuel's room. Emanuel and Claude buy some food for a late-night picnic and steal a bottle of wine in the process. Just a couple of kids looking to have some fun, nothing wrong here. The two head to some private property and after a brief conversation, start getting hot and heavy on the docks. We return to Emanuel daydreaming while at work at the pharmacy. Linda's talking to Emanuel's coworker Arthur about baby medicine, and Emanuel frantically tries to get him to leave. Emanuel really wants to protect Chloe from being found out as a fake, and it's honestly hard to tell if she's protecting Linda or herself. Linda mentions that she's been invited to Emanuel's birthday dinner, and Arthur offers to babysit for Linda. Arthur's clearly smitten. Dennis mentioned earlier that Emanuel gets like this around her birthday every year due to her mother's death. And it seems like we're rapidly approaching the birthday dinner that will prove to be the climax of this bizarre and confusing tale. It's now Friday, Emanuel's birthday, and we find her in her father's study. Dennis begins retelling to Emanuel the story of the day her mother gave birth. Soon, Emanuel cuts her father off and describes the dream her mother had the previous night. Her mother dreamt of swimming underwater in a lake, but she was able to breathe. It was night, but she could see, and she was happy swimming amongst the fishes. We learned that Emanuel's mother needed an emergency C-section when attempting to give birth, and when the paramedics saved Emanuel, her mother passed. One last breath for one first breath. Her father's heartbroken again, and it's clear that he's suffering and trying to move on, while Emanuel is still trying to figure out if there's any details about that day that she might have missed before. She cannot move on. Later that night after dinner, Janice broaches an uncomfortable subject with Linda. She urges Linda to reinforce her interest in men so that Emanuel doesn't get the wrong idea about their relationship. Janice thinks that growing up without a mother has led to Emanuel getting the wrong idea about the types of relationship she needs in order to fill that void. Seems like Emanuel joked about being a lesbian one too many times in front of Janice. In a room, Emanuel and Linda have a brief chat about Emanuel's mother, Eva, who looks an awful lot like Linda. They share a friendly hug, which Janice walks in on and makes just a little awkward. Emanuel walks Claude out and he mentions he'll hopefully be landscaping for Linda. Emanuel gets very overprotective and claims that would be smothering, so Claude says she won't have to see him at all, and rides off into the night. Again, we see Emanuel become very overprotective of her relationship with Linda, not wanting anyone else to interfere or get too close. Later at Linda's, Linda prepares for a date with Arthur. During their conversation, Linda says to Emanuel, "It can't just be the three of us forever and ever." But this is followed by a strange look from Emanuel that hints at, what if? Emanuel is starting to feel loved as a daughter. She says, to the doll, that it's how she always imagined it would feel. Emanuel falls asleep. Arthur and Linda return home. Obviously the date went well, and the two are in good spirits. Linda wants to check on Chloe, and Arthur's eager to see the child as well. Emanuel begs Arthur to stay downstairs, but to no avail. Just as you can imagine, everything goes haywire once Arthur meets baby Chloe. Arthur calls out the doll for being, well, a doll, and not a living child. Linda becomes frantic and claims Emanuel must have hidden the real Chloe somewhere else. Emanuel sticks to the narrative that the doll is the real Chloe, and falls into a trance on the floor, overcome with the pressure of the moment. Emanuel's trance becomes the same dream her mother had the night before her death. She sees her mother and baby Chloe. The baby comes to life and swims away from Emanuel with Eva. All fades to black. Emanuel is awoken by her father and Janice and taken away on a stretcher with police present. She's interrogated in the hospital but speaks as if the dream is reality. She's overcome with fatigue and falls again into sleep. Janice opens up to Emanuel about not being able to have kids and how it almost broke her spirit. This whole story's become sort of a love triangle between mother and daughter. Not a romantic love triangle, but a familial love triangle, with each woman seeking to fill a void in their heart caused by loss. Now, you'd think that Emanuel is on the mend, but she approaches her father and wishes to see Linda. Her father obviously disapproves and forbids this. Well, off go Claude and Emanuel, breaking the law again to reach Linda, who's currently committed in a psychiatric hospital. Who do you think's crazier? The mental patient or the one breaking into the mental hospital? The young lovers break in, though Claude leaves once the fence is breached, and Emanuel delivers the baby Chloe to Linda. She explains the dream she had about Chloe and Eva. She explains the water and how everything is not all right. They fly the coop, and Emanuel takes them to visit her mother's grave for the first time. The pair bury baby Chloe in a tearful exchange and lay down together under the stars. It's a long way back, but now they can face the truth together. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.